Now, let me tell you something your doctor almost certainly has not told you. Most people spend years trying to heal their gut. They change their diet, they cut out gluten, they buy $60 probiotic bottles and take them faithfully every morning. And then they wait. What they never get told, and this is the part that changes everything, is that healing is already happening. Right now.
In many of you watching this, the repair process has already begun, and your body has been sending you signals for weeks. Specific, measurable biological signals. But here is the problem. Those signals do not look like what you expect healing to look like. They do not look like perfect digestion. They do not look like a flat stomach or a clean bill of health from your gastroenterologist. Some of them feel, at first, like the problem is getting worse. Sign number 3, which I will get to in a few minutes from, is one that 7 out of 10 patients misread as a setback. It is not a setback. Misinterpreting this can lead to unnecessary discouragement. It is the clearest signal your gut microbiome can send you that the environment inside your intestine is shifting in the right direction. 8 signs, all of them tied to measurable changes in gut permeability, microbial diversity, or the gut-brain signaling axis pore. Mechanisms documented in gastroenterology literature. And most people walk right past every single one. What your doctor treats as separate conditions often has one hidden source. Let me show you what that source is. Yeah. I have spent years working with patients who have already been through the standard referral pipeline, the colonoscopies, the SIBO breath tests, the motility studies, and are still not recovering. Across hundreds of those cases, I kept seeing the same pattern. People quitting a protocol that was already working because they did not recognize what progress looked like. That is what this video fixes. Here is exactly what we cover. Promise number 1. I will show you the single most misread sign of gut healing. The one that sends most people back to elimination diets they do not need. Promise number 2. I will explain the specific change in bowel pattern. That is not a symptom of worsening inflammation, but is actually the first sign that your mucosal lining is regenerating. Promise number 3. I will walk you through the skin signal that dermatologists almost never connect to gut repair care, and why the timing of it matters more than the symptom itself. Promise number 4. I will cover the sleep change that nearly every healing gut patient reports between weeks 3 and 6 of a protocol, and what it means mechanistically.
Promise number 5.
I will tell you about the emotional sign, the one that sounds the least medical but is the most documented time, and the specific neurotransmitter pathway that explains why it appears. All 8 signs, the science behind each one, and what to do if you are not seeing them yet. I am a gastroenterologist with a clinical focus on gut-brain axis dysfunction and intestinal permeability repair. My practice sees patients who have already been through the standard referral pathway, the scopes, the SIBO tests, the motility studies POUND, and are still not recovering. The patterns I am going to describe today, I have observed across hundreds of those cases. Let me tell you about a patient. I will call her Sandra. She was 53 years old, a middle school teacher from outside of Columbus, Ohio. For 4 years, her doctor had managed her diagnosis of irritable bowel syndrome with a low FODMAP diet and a low-dose antidepressant, which is a standard protocol and not unreasonable. Sandra followed it faithfully. Then she found a functional medicine practitioner who put her on a gut repair protocol, high-dose L-glutamine, a specific multi-strain probiotic with documented mucosal adhesion, bone broth twice a day. She gave it 6 weeks. At week 4, Sandra called her new practitioner's office in a panic. Her bloating had returned. Her stool pattern had changed in a way she described as inconsistent. She was sleeping more than usual, sometimes 9 hours, and waking up feeling strange, not groggy, but almost too alert, like something in her body was turned on at 3 a.m. And she had developed a patch of dry, slightly rough skin on her right forearm that had not been there before. She was convinced the protocol was making her worse. She wanted to stop. Her practitioner did not let her stop. Because every single thing Sandra was describing, because the bloating variation, the stool pattern shift, the sleep architecture change, the skin event go, was a documented sign of active gut repair, not of failure, of progress. Here is what most doctors never tell their patients, and what you can actually do about it starting this week. The gut healing process is not linear, and the first 6 weeks of active repair
produce symptoms that are almost universally mistaken for worsening. The reason is biology. When you repair intestinal permeability, you are not simply patching holes in a wall. You are changing the chemical environment of your entire gut lumen. You are altering the pH that determines which bacterial strains can survive. You are shifting the ratio of short-chain fatty acid production,
which affects gut motility, gut-brain signaling, and skin barrier function simultaneously. You are, in the language of microbiology,
disrupting an established ecosystem and replacing it with a healthier one. Ecosystems, when they are disrupted poor,
even in the right direction pitat, produce turbulence before they produce stability. Sandra did not stop the protocol.
By week 8, the bloating was gone. The skin patch had cleared. The sleep had normalized into the most consistent sleep she had experienced in a decade. And her gastroenterologist, at a routine follow-up 3 months later, noted a measurable reduction
in the mucosal inflammation markers that had been elevated in her previous colonoscopy biopsy.
She had been healed for 4 of the 6 weeks she thought she was failing. That is what this video is about. Not the signs of a gut that is healthy, but the signs of a gut that is in the process of getting their toe. Signs you are probably seeing right now and misreading as something wrong.
So let's look at those signs and how to interpret them correctly.
I will come back to exactly what was happening in Sandra's gut at week 4, because it connects directly to signs 3, 5, and 7.
But first, Raug, the framework that makes all 8 signs make sense. To understand why healing produces strange signals,
you need to understand what the gut actually does, at a level most gastroenterology appointments do not have time to cover.
Your gut is not a tube. It is an ecosystem of approximately 38 trillion microbial organisms, a surface area of roughly 400 square meters
of mucosal tissue, a semi-permeable barrier that separates the inside of your intestine from your bloodstream, and a neural network
of over 500 million neurons that communicates bidirectionally with your brain. When that ecosystem is damaged by antibiotics, by chronic stress, by a diet high in ultra-processed foods, by gut infections, by NSAID overuse, 4 things happen simultaneously.
First, the tight junction proteins that seal the gaps between intestinal epithelial cells begin to loosen.
This is what clinicians mean by intestinal hyperpermeability and what the popular press calls leaky gut. Bacterial fragments,
partially digested food proteins, and lipopolysaccharide molecules from gram-negative bacteria cross into the bloodstream in quantities the immune system was not designed to handle at that volume. Second, microbial diversity collapses.
A healthy gut contains somewhere between 500 and 1,000 distinct bacterial species. A damaged gut may contain fewer than 200.
The species that survive are disproportionately the ones that tolerate inflammatory environments superior, meaning the surviving bacteria are themselves driving further inflammation. Third, short-chain fatty acid production drops. Short-chain fatty acids
butyrate, propionate, acetate barn are produced when certain bacterial strains ferment dietary fiber. Butyrate is the primary fuel for the colonocytes, the cells that form the gut wall. Without adequate butyrate production, the gut wall cannot repair itself efficiently.
It is analogous to trying to rebuild a house while cutting off the supply of building materials. Fourth, the gut-brain axis becomes dysregulated. Roughly 90% of the body's serotonin is produced in the gut. When gut microbial composition shifts, serotonin synthesis shifts. This is not a metaphor. It is a direct biochemical pathway, the enteric nervous system, which governs gut motility. And that's why this is so critical.
Is running on a compromised neurotransmitter supply. Now here is where the healing process becomes important to understand.
When you begin a genuine gut repair protocol, whether that is dietary, supplementic, or both, the sequence of events follows a specific biological order.
Microbial diversity begins to shift within 7 to 14 days if the right bacterial strains are introduced in adequate quantities.
Tight junction proteins take approximately 3 to 4 weeks to begin measurably reinforcing, given adequate nutritional support. Short-chain fatty acid production follows the diversity shift. It cannot lead it. Serotonin resynthesis in the gut follows the bacterial shift,
typically appearing between weeks 4 and 8. This sequence matters because the symptoms associated with each phase overlap,
compete, and sometimes look like deterioration. The bloating that Sandra experienced at week 4 was not worsening inflammation. It was the fermentation signature of new bacterial strains establishing colonization. Different bacteria produce different gas profiles.
All right.
The gut colonized predominantly by a narrow range of firmicutes produces different gases than a gut in the process of rediversifying.
The change in gas production is evidence of change in microbial composition. It is the sign you want to see. Most patients stop their protocol right at this point. They interpret the bloating change as failure. They do not know that 3 weeks later, the bloating will be lower than it has been in years. Here is the thing I want you to hold on to before the 3 cases.
Every one of the 8 signs has a biological name, a mechanism, a timeline, and all of them show up in the clinical literature on gut repair. They are not anecdotal. What is missing from that literature is a plain language translation that a patient can actually use in real time.
That is what comes next. 3 people. 3 completely different presentations of the same underlying process.
One of them is almost certainly going to sound like you. The first case is Michael. He was 61 years old, a retired engineer from Arizona who had been dealing with chronic constipation for 11 years. Not the kind of constipation
that responds to magnesium and hydration per, the kind that had been scoped, biopsied, and attributed to slow transit motility.
After a combination of decades of NSAID use for a bad hip and 2 rounds of broad-spectrum antibiotics in his late 40s. Michael started a targeted protocol in January. By week 2, he noticed that his sleep PAR, which had always been adequate but shallow PO, he was dreaming more vividly, he was waking less frequently at night.
Attributed this to stress reduction from retirement.
His practitioner suspected something else entirely. What Michael was experiencing was the early serotonin resynthesis signal. As his gut bacterial composition began to shift towards strains with higher serotonin-producing capacity, the downstream effect on his sleep architecture was the first measurable change. Serotonin is a precursor to melatonin. A gut that is producing more serotonin will, within weeks, be producing more melatonin. The sleep deepening was not coincidence. It was a biological marker. And it appeared 3 weeks before
Any change in Michael's bowel pattern ATAV, which is exactly what the sequence predicts. The second case is Darlene.
She was 4 to 7 years old, a nurse from the Pacific Northwest, who had developed what she described as random skin flares over the previous 2 years in Triam.
Patches of rough, slightly inflamed skin on her upper arms and lower back that her dermatologist had called keratosis pilaris,
With a possible atopic component and managed with topical treatments. The skin never fully cleared.
When Darlene began a gut repair protocol, the skin flares temporarily intensified around week 3. The patches became slightly redder, slightly more raised.
She called her dermatologist, who adjusted her topical prescription. What neither of them initially connected was that the intensification
Was happening in precise synchrony with the first measurable shift in her stool's short-chain fatty acid profile, which her functional practitioner had measured with a comprehensive stool test. As the butyrate-producing bacteria in Darlene's colon
increased in population, the inflammation signals passing through her gut-skin axis were transiently amplified before they subsided.
The skin was not worsening independently. It was responding to a wave of immunological recalibration originating in the gut.
By week 7, the patches had cleared to a degree that no topical treatment had previously achieved. Her dermatologist, to his credit, asked specifically what had changed. That is the gut-skin axis at work. The third case is Raymond. He was 55 years old, an accountant from the Southeast, whose primary complaint was not gut symptoms, but mood rap, specifically a low-grade flatness that he described as not quite depression, but not quite himself either.
His physician had offered an SSRI, which Raymond had declined, preferring to investigate underlying causes first. Raymond's gut repair protocol was driven primarily by dietary change, removing ultra-processed food, dramatically increasing fermented vegetable, and diverse fiber sources. By week 5, he experienced something he described, somewhat apologetically, as an emotional event.
Not a crisis, at a release. He found himself moved to tears watching a film that would not normally have produced that reaction. He felt what he called a loosening, a return of something he had not realized was missing. His practitioner recognized this immediately.
It is not unusual. As the gut serotonin pathway normalizes, the emotional blunting associated with gut dysbiosis begins to lift.
The first sign of that lifting is often not stable happiness. It is the return of emotional range, the capacity to feel in both directions.
Raymond was not having a psychological episode. He was having a biochemical one. The correct interpretation was that his gut-brain axis had begun to function at a level it had not reached in years. Three very different presentations, the same underlying process. Here are all 8 signs, the ones you are probably ignoring. Sign number 1, your bloating pattern changes but does not disappear. This is the sign most people misread as failure. If you have had chronic gut issues and you start a repair protocol, your bloating will not simply go away in the first few weeks. What will happen, Pat, and this is the sign to track, Pat, is that the character of the bloating changes. The timing shifts, the location shifts, the consistency shifts. Where you previously bloated predictably 2 hours after every meal, where you now bloat irregularly, or primarily in the evening, or in response to foods that did not previously cause it.
If so,
This variability is not worsening. It is evidence that your microbial fermentation profile is changing. Different bacterial populations. Fermenting the same food produce different gas profiles at different times. Track the variability. Variability itself is the sign.
Sign number 2. Your stool pattern becomes temporarily inconsistent. This one is close to sign number 1 but distinct.
I am not talking about changes in consistency or color, which have their own significance. I am talking about frequency and predictability. A gut that was reliably constipated may become irregular. A gut that was reliably loose may produce days of normal. The motor pattern of the gut trachea, which is governed by the enteric nervous system, which is running on a serotonin supply that is actively changing PRUC, will oscillate before it stabilizes. This oscillation, in the absence of a new pathological cause, is a sign that the neuromuscular program of the gut is being rewritten. It is not comfortable, it is not alarming. It is the expected signature of a nervous system in transition. Sign number 3, you feel more tired than usual in weeks 3 and 4. This is the one. Yes, that's exactly right.
This is the sign that 7 out of 10 patients misread as a sign that the protocol is not working, or that they are getting sick.
or that they need to add a supplement they saw in a comment section.
The fatigue of week 3 and week 4 is almost universal in genuine gut healing. And it shows up consistently across functional medicine clinical reports on gut repair protocols. Here is why. The immune system is heavily concentrated in the gut. Research in mucosal immunology estimates that approximately 70% of the body's immune tissue
Is gut-associated lymphoid tissue. When the gut environment shifts, the immune system is recalibrated. That recalibration has an energy cost.
the T regulatory cells, the secretory immunoglobulin A production, the cytokine balance BU, all of it is being adjusted simultaneously.
The body is running a major systems update. Fatigue is the processing load. It typically resolves by week 6 or 7.
If you are in week 3 of a gut repair protocol and you are tired, do not stop. That fatigue is the cost of progress.
Sign number 4. Your sleep deepens, but your dreams become more vivid or unusual, as described in Michael's case.
The serotonin-melatonin pathway is directly affected by gut microbial composition. In the early phases of gut repair, serotonin in the gut increases before it fully stabilizes. The result is a period of altered sleep architecture, deeper total sleep.
But with more REM activity and more vivid dreaming. Some patients describe the dreams as more emotionally intense, sometimes unsettling.
This is not a psychological event, it is a biochemical one. The melatonin precursor supply has increased. The brain is using it.
Track this sign carefully, Trant. It typically appears between days 14 and 28 of an effective protocol, which makes it one of the earliest leading indicators of genuine gut-brain axis improvement. Sign number 5, a skin change appears.
Typically on the arms or lower back. The gut-skin axis is mediated primarily through 3 pathways: systemic inflammatory cytokines, the gut-liver-skin detoxification route, and the direct bacterial metabolite pathway. When gut repair begins and microbial composition shifts,
All 3 pathways are transiently disrupted before they stabilize at a healthier baseline. For a subset of patients, though,
roughly 30 to 40% in my clinical experience, this produces a transient skin event, not a severe rash.
More commonly, a rough patch, a mild flare of pre-existing eczema or keratosis, or an unusual dryness in a localized area.
If this appears in weeks 3 through 5 of a protocol and you have no other explanation for it, consider it a sign. It will typically resolve within 2 to 3 weeks as the immune recalibration completes. Sign number 6, your appetite becomes more sensitive.
To quality rather than quantity. This one is subtle and often dismissed as coincidence. As the gut repairs and microbial diversity increases,
The hormonal signaling that governs appetite, ghrelin from the stomach, peptide YY, and GLP-1 from the small intestine, leptin at the central level,
begins to recalibrate. Patients describe this change as a reduced tolerance for food they used to eat without a second thought.
Ultra-processed foods start to feel heavy or unsatisfying. Sugar becomes less appealing. The desire for fermented foods, fiber-dense vegetables, and whole proteins increases. This is not willpower. This is the gut sending different hormonal signals to the brain. The microbiome that is diversifying and producing more short-chain fatty acids is also producing different satiety hormone signals.
When your appetite changes in this direction spontaneously, without conscious effort, your gut repair is working.
Sign number 7, your emotional range expands count, and the first expansion often feels destabilizing, as described in Raymond's case.
As gut serotonin production normalizes, the emotional flattening associated with gut dysbiosis begins to lift.
The first sign of that lift is not a clean, positive shift to happiness. It is the return of emotional range in both directions.
Patients become more easily moved by music, by small moments, sometimes by things that feel disproportionate to the trigger.
Some patients find this alarming. They interpret it as anxiety or emotional instability. A clinician who knows what to look for,
He will recognize it as the gut-brain axis coming back online. The relationship between gut microbial composition and mood regulation is one of the most active areas of research in current gastroenterology and neuroscience. Studies in journals covering the gut-brain axis
have consistently documented that microbial shifts produce measurable changes in serotonin pathway activity. The serotonin system,
when it has been running at low capacity for an extended period, does not return to baseline smoothly. It overshoots slightly before it calibrates. That overshoot is a sign. It is temporary, and it is better than the alternative. Sign number 8, your reactions to specific foods become clearer and more immediate. A dysbiotic gut produces generalized, diffuse symptoms in response to food.
Bloating that seems unrelated to anything specific. Fatigue that could be attributed to anything. Headaches 2 hours after eating.
That you never connect to the meal. As the gut repairs and the mucosal barrier tightens, something counterintuitive happens.
Individual food sensitivities become more apparent, not less. This is because a tighter barrier produces a sharper signal. The immune system that was previously responding to a broad chronic leak responds more specifically to discrete insults. Patients describe this as their body suddenly being more reactive to certain foods.
The correct interpretation is the opposite. Their body is now communicating more precisely. Use this window to do an honest food journal. What the tightening barrier is showing you
Is exactly what was causing low-level damage all along, at a volume you could not previously isolate. Almost nobody is using this.
and it may be the most valuable tracking tool in the entire gut repair process. It is called a symptom trajectory journal.
And the principle is simple, but the execution is specific. Most patients track symptoms on any given day and rate them as better or worse. This approach is almost useless for gut healing because the signal-to-noise ratio in any single day is too low.
Gut symptoms vary with stress, sleep, hydration, hormonal cycles, and a dozen other variables that have nothing to do with the repair process. What you track instead is a rolling 7-day window scored on 4 specific metrics: bloating variability, sleep depth, appetite quality signal, and emotional range, not whether each is good or bad, whether each is changing. You score each metric on a simple 1 to 5 scale.
For directional change. A score of 1 means no change. A score of 5 means significant directional movement.
At the end of each week, you add the 4 scores. In a gut that is not healing, this composite score will hover around 4 to 8, with minimal trend. In a gut that is actively healing, and even if the daily experience feels difficult high, this score will trend upward over 4 to 6 weeks. Because the 4 metrics are the exact readouts of the 4 biological systems in transition: the microbiome, the neurotransmitter pathway,
The mucosal barrier, and the gut-brain axis. Sandra used this method starting at week 3 of her protocol, at her practitioner's suggestion.
When she wanted to stop at week 4, her composite score was already trending clearly upward. She saw the trajectory on paper. She stayed with the protocol. Track direction, not daily comfort. They are not the same thing. I put together a free resource specifically for this part. It is called the Gut Healing Symptom Tracker, and it is a one-page guide that walks you through the exact 4-metric system I just described, with specific weekly scoring instructions and a visual trend chart you can fill in by hand. It also includes a short reference guide to the 8 signs in this video too, the biological mechanism behind each one, what the expected timing is, and what to do if you are past week 6 and not seeing any of them. The link is in the description below. No email required to view it, pal. I made it a direct PDF download because I wanted you to have it immediately, not 2 weeks from now after a welcome sequence. If you are currently on a gut repair protocol and feeling stuck, print it out and work through the scoring system for your last 3 weeks of symptoms. Most people who do this discover they were already seeing 3 or 4 of these signs and attributing them to something else entirely. The tracker is free. The link is in the description. One more thing. If you have not yet watched the video on what destroys gut microbial diversity, in the first place, Purav, the specific daily habits that collapse bacterial richness over months without any obvious symptoms, Purav. That is the logical video to watch before this one. It explains why the repair process becomes necessary. The link is in the description
And in the card on screen now. Start there if you want the full picture. Come back here when you are in the middle of the repair.
If you are looking for a probiotic that has been specifically formulated for mucosal adhesion and short-chain fatty acid production, Paran, the 2 mechanisms I covered in the mechanism section, the one I have used most consistently in clinical recommendation is linked in the description as well. It contains 5 strains with documented adhesion capacity, including Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG and Bifidobacterium longum BB536, at a clinically relevant dose. I am not paid to say it works. It is simply the product that matches the mechanism most closely, based on the available data as of this recording. The link is affiliate tagged, meaning I may receive a small commission if you purchase through it at no additional cost to you, Cough, and I am disclosing that up front. Sandra did not know at week 4 that she was 4 weeks
Into an 8-week process that would produce the best gut health she had experienced since her early 30s.
She only knew that things felt uncertain. That is the experience of healing. It does not announce itself cleanly. It produces turbulence, variability, and signals that look nothing like the magazine version of wellness. The 8 signs in this.
Your gut is not just a digestive organ. It is the headquarters of your health.
It governs your immune system, your neurotransmitter production, your hormonal signaling, your skin, and your sleep.
Are not pleasant in the moment. Change bloating patterns, inconsistent stool, fatigue, vivid dreams, skin events, appetite shifts, emotional,
Sharper food reactions. None of these feel good when they are happening. All of them, in the right context and at the right timing, when it heals, it does not heal quietly. It does it with turbulence, because turbulence is what biological transition looks like. If this video gave you a different lens for what you are currently experiencing, I want to know. Type H. Ealing in the comments below if you recognized any of these 8 signs in yourself. I read every reply, Pyre, and your response helps me know what to cover next.
If you found this useful, click the like button. It takes 2 seconds and it tells the algorithm to put this in front of people who need it.
And if you are not subscribed yet and you want to understand what your gut is telling you at a level your regular appointments do not cover, subscribe. This channel exists because most patients deserve more than a 7-minute office visit and a handout. If you have a friend, a family member, or a partner who is in the middle of a gut repair protocol right now and is about to give up the TAM,
Because week 3 or week 4 has felt like failure, but send them this video. The difference between stopping at week 4
and continuing to week 8 is, in many cases, the difference between 2 years of continued symptoms and a measurable recovery. That is not a claim. It is Sandra's story. It is Michael's. It is Darlene's. Send it to the person who needs to see it.
I will see you in the next video.